topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Tampa. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show. We do our show live. Believe it or not, most talk shows are pre-recorded. When you do a live show, you've got many elements that could deter from the show. We had one last night. Our great producer, Rebel, is in Louisiana, and they had horrible tornadoes last night. So we almost didn't get the show on. And then we've had some technical problems, but we're here with you, and we're here to teach you. We're here to love on you, and we're just so glad that we're able to pull today's show off, because this is the last Monday of the month, which means London Baker Law, Debbie Baker. Good morning, Miss Baker. Debbie, are you there? Sometimes you look at, I don't think we're supposed to do today's show. Debbie, are you there?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. What's happening?
Steve.
Yes.
Steve, can you hear me now?
I hear you fine.
This is so weird. Okay. Okay. Well, have we had fun already this morning?
Yeah, listen, I just gave you a great opening, and God has allowed us to put this show on. So I guess we're supposed to be here.
Life is
Can
good,
you,
right?
Debbie, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, good.
I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
We hear
Yep.
you fine. I was just explaining, this is one of the few talk shows that's live. Most talk shows are pre-recorded. And when you do a live show, you never know what's going to happen. And like I was telling everybody, our great producer had a major tornado last night, and we didn't even know if we were going to get today's show on. But like I said, I guess God wanted us to do today's show. And then we've had some technical problems, but the bottom line is this is the last Monday of the month, which means Debbie Baker, attorney Debbie Baker. Welcome and good morning.
Thanks. I'm excited.
Now, Debbie's on the phone today. That's the hardest way to do an interview. I'm giving you a little backstage input. It's not easy being on the phone to do a show for 25 minutes, but we're going to try to knock it out. I've got some great questions for Debbie, but I keep looking at our numbers, which keep going up. And Debbie, we are getting so many new people who are finding the show. So if you don't mind, would you mind introducing yourself and telling everybody about your practice and yourself?
Sure. I'm Debbie Baker. I love technology. Oh, that's a lie. Okay. Anyway,
She's also a comedian too.
I am an estate planning, estate probates trust in Florida. I've been graduated in 2015. I was sworn in October of 2015. So I haven't been practicing for quite 8 years. I spent 30 years or more being an executive coach. People who knew me, if anybody I know now knew me at 5, they'd probably tell you then I was more than happy to tell them how to live their lives before that. So, but anyway, for at least over 30 years, I was a coach helping people make difficult decisions and ask them hard questions, and so they could have more peace and contentment in their life. And then in 2008, God told me to go to law school, which is a long story. Great story, long story. And the 4 years in law school were glorious. And I'm in this world of estate planning and probate. I've recently taken on elder law. And the world that there's in the area that there are so many people who need help, and I am driven to be of service. So that's a very short version of who I am.
Debbie, you love helping people, and you've really got a heart for it. And I guess that's why estate planning was the best area of law for you to go into.
Yes. Well, I certainly promised myself I never wanted to be in court, although people were very disappointed that I didn't want to because they say I'm a great arguer.
Yes.
But court didn't appeal to me. I really wanted to sit on the side of somebody and kind of, literally or figuratively hold their hand, pray with them when that was appropriate or asked for, or I felt moved to, and just walk them through it. I had a client, whose sister died yesterday, and we've been walking the living sister, through that for the last 6 weeks, trying to help her sister who was ill. And it's really rewarding. It's certainly we couldn't stop the passing, but I believe that I was in a position to make all the conversations and the potential obstacles easier for the surviving sister as she navigated attempting to get the dying sister qualified for Medicaid. So, so that's
Debbie, I got to tell you that I don't know why I'm noticing it more and more over the last 6 to 8 months, but it just seems like more and more people are passing away that you just thought they were in great health. And there's a lot, I'm seeing athletes who are passing away at a young age. And I don't know if it had something to do with a word I'm not allowed to mention that started with a C. I'm not allowed to mention that, but you just never know. And so estate planning I think is more important now than ever before. You can't wait like maybe you used to.
Well, that's a really interesting thought. That would, and I would imagine that people used to wait longer, maybe before, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago.
Right.
But it's an easy thing to avoid. Just in terms of people who develop dementia. I did some work in that, some learning in that a few years ago, and I thought my brother had it. And I gathered the general rule of thumb, and this is probably true with estate planning, that people wait at least 90 days too long before they do anything.
Yes,
especially
I believe
in the face of illness, because they can't imagine it's happening, or they think they're avoiding confronting what's happening, or it's so gradual that it would be if you and I were married and you started repeating yourself, but you'd always repeated yourself to some degree. I might not even be aware of it,
right?
Particularly until somebody came in and said, "Have you noticed that Steve keeps repeating himself?" Or, "I've noticed it, but I think, you're under a lot of stress, whatever." You've got people you've got a production person who's in Louisiana with tornadoes, and you're concerned for her personally, and then you're wondering about your show, and so we overlook it. And with estate planning, I would imagine it's the same thing. You're in your 40s, and your parents are now in their 60s or 70s, depending on how old when they had you, and they're very young, 60s and 70s. And so you can't envision that they're not the people you've always known. Well, you ignore it, and you make excuses for it. And it's a really easy thing to ignore because none of us are ever going to die, and none of us will probably ever be sick.
How much
do we ever think about being sick? Go ahead.
You have been a life coach for a long time. How much of that has helped you in your practice now?
Oh, it helps a lot. It helps a lot because part of what people like or don't like, or at least admire about me, I think, is that I'm always very direct. I had a friend call me last week whose father is struggling with some stuff, and she said, I can trust you to tell him the truth. You're not going to sugarcoat it. You're not going to skate over it. You're not going to avoid it. You're going to ask him pointed questions, and he may not answer them or want to answer them, but I can trust that you're not going to be sugar and spice, so to speak. I think people have always appreciated that I will say what I'm thinking. The coaching gave me a lot of practice in tact, for want of a better word, not being what do they call people from the Northeast, brutally honest, or at least New Yorkers, brutally honest, but honest.
Yes.
I mean, I think I'm lots of people who think I'm brutally honest, but
it's in a good way.
A lot because, and I also have been very blessed since as long as I can remember to have really great intuition and substantial compassion. But my intuition surprises me at times because I'll be talking to a person and I'll say something that I'm just thinking I'm making up, and they'll say, this happened in coaching, it's happened in my planning. Like, how did you know? Well, I didn't know. I mean, it's not like I had a script that said, Steve's experiencing this. We've talked about our animals, Steve, and my cat has made appearances, and you've talked about how you become a cat person. It would be saying to you, even in a casual conversation, something about cats that indicated I had a friend whose cat had just died, and you said, you're not going to believe this, but 2:00 this morning, Sophia and I were rushing, her to the hospital, and the vet couldn't do anything. And so I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I wasn't talking about you. So, yes, more direct answer to your question is the coaching has been hugely helpful in my practice. And it helps that even though I say I'm 39 and have been for a lot of years, I've been 39 for a lot of years. And, Frank Sinatra had an old song that love is wasted on the young. Well, you don't get wisdom by not having experiences. And if you're willing to look at what those experiences taught you, you really have a lot to offer people. All of us do, not me, but there's a lot to offer people. Not that their experiences will be mine. No estate planning client's going to come in with my experiences. Okay. But my experiences for myself and for others will inform me about what is so hard about making this decision. I have a client now who's been searching for a couple to be permanent guardian for their children should both of the parents pass before he becomes 18 at least. And the woman said, I had no idea it would be this hard. Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. You got to find people your child knows. You got to find people who you're pretty sure will raise them the way you would. Not exactly, but substantially. You got to find people who will honor your wishes. So, if your idea is that they don't get a car when they're 16 unless they're contributing to its upkeep, and they raised a family where they just gave a kid a car when they were 16, if there was a clunker, it's like, well, this is what mom and dad wanted. this is what they would have done, and we're going to do this. Or you're going to go to college before you get this money. Well, your kids, I know my kids didn't go to college, but this is what your mom and dad wanted. So find a trade school, find the military, find something. We're honoring what your mom and dad would have wanted you to have, and we made that promise. And I can help people walk through those decisions.
You brought up your cat just a minute ago. We actually got a letter from one of the listeners that wrote a question in that she has a cat, and she feels like the cat is going to outlive her. And is there anything she can do as to estate planning for her cat?
Oh, there is. It depends upon where she lives, but there is. Florida allows pet trusts, as a big thing. But I've had at least one client, I don't know that I've had another, who has made a specific gift of money, a specific amount of money gift to a specific person to take care of his and his wife's cat or cats when the second of them dies or when it becomes necessary. So you could absolutely make provisions for your animals. Absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. That was a question that had come up. Let me go to my next question. What's better when you've got minor children that are involved? What's better, a trust or a will?
I believe that if you've got minor children, you want to establish a trust, because in establishing a trust, you are in control of setting the standards, parameters, limitations, whatever, for how monies that would go to that child get distributed. I know for years I wouldn't carry a bill more than $20, because that, other than that, it was way too big for me to get my mind around, which means you would be safe loaning me $50 because I wouldn't break the bill. But if you know, either because you know your children or your sense of their best interests are, you don't give them a lot of money, however you define that, when they're 18 years old, because you don't want to run the risk of their blowing it. I have a friend whose daughter and son each inherited $100,000 from their grandmother when their grandmother died, and the daughter spent it in 6 months and then called her mother and said, "Why'd you let grandma give me that money?" Well, grandma didn't ask me, because I would have told her no, not because of you, but because you were too young. So you can set up ages and stages. You can set up they get a share when they're 18 because they've graduated from high school. You can set up that they get a certain amount of money when they're 22, where they graduated from college or they finished a trade school. So it would be setting up in a trust how you would have treated them had you lived to see them reach those ages. And I think it's a really, really good idea. So with people with young children, young children. Right now I've got one who's got an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. I've got another one. She's got one and he's 6. So definitely for those. If you've got a 16 and 17-year-old, I'd probably still recommend it, unless you're going to trust them with money. And I have people who set up trusts for adult children where they don't get any money until they're 35. And my son and daughter-in-law set up a trust where I think the ages are 35, 40, and 45. And, sometimes I think they're going to live, really? They're going to live that long? But all of their children are very responsible. They have good jobs, all of them. 2 of them are going to be parents this year. And it's like, they don't need the money right now. So their father and mother set it up so they get distributions when they were a lot younger when they were set up. But right now he's got one that's 32 and one that's 31 and one that's 29. So in a few years, they'd be, eligible for distribution. But definitely with minor children, I recommend trust. You still there? Steve?
Actually, Steve has lost his signal, but we will continue the show. He said there's a hurricane coming down to Florida, so I hope everybody over there is good. So,
Well, right now it's coming down. It's coming down the Gulf. This has been a great day, but you're okay, right? Wherever you are for now, you're okay.
yeah, it's a tornado. It's it manages it, but it goes away quickly. It's a lot better than a tornado. And everybody that went through anything like that, I'm not saying a tornado is a good thing, but it's less damage than a hurricane since I've been through Katrina and Ida.
Oh wow, yeah.
Everybody's
okay.
like,
So we're
why do you live there?
Wow.
Like, because why does anybody live anywhere? Because it's a Tornado Alley. People still live there, right? Not here.
Right,
We're not
yeah.
Tornado Alley, but Kansas and everywhere else, they still live there.
right.
Though it happens, and people still live in Florida, they get hurricanes too. So, it just
Yeah.
you
it's
got to
really
learn
weird.
to cope with things and move on. But speaking of moving on, when people are considering planning a trust for their estate, and when we say estate, you don't mean just rich people, correct?
Absolutely not. $500 you've got in the state.
So
If you have any money that's only yours, or any asset that's only yours, you have an estate that can wind up in court unless you do something about it.
see, and people need to really consider that. There's also other benefits to having a trust, correct?
Yes. It will avoid probate in most situations, which means everything stays private, and you don't have to go to a court to get anybody's permission to distribute assets and take care of things without anybody knowing what you're doing.
And a will and a trust, how are they different?
Okay, so the will is the instrument that says how you want to dispose of your assets, and the will is the one that's controlling if you've left anything in a. Okay, so are you married, Rebel?
I am not, no.
Or are you single? Okay, so you're single. So right now, anything you own, whatever it is, checking, savings, whatever it is in your name only, and maybe you have a beneficiary designation. But what happens oftentimes is people don't even have beneficiary designations, which would mean your bank knows to who to give however much or little money is in your account to a particular person should you pass. Okay. So what happens, any asset, whatever that is, home, car, whatever, bank accounts, whatever, if it's only titled in one person's name, needs the court to say that so-and-so can get it. That's a will.
Otherwise, it could go to the state, correct?
No, it's unlikely it will go to the state. But what happens is, I had a client recently. Well, she didn't become a client because what she realized is her brother had money in two places.
I think we're back on. I don't know what happened if we had a power surge.
No, Steve, we've been here.
Anyway, so I'm going
continue.
to finish this with Rebel. So she had a brother who passed, and he had money in an account that only had his name on it. Her legal fees are going to be $6,000. Let's just say, okay, and she was able to find somebody who was willing to tell her that there was less than $6,000 in the account. There was no point in her doing anything. Which is why it's really important that anything you have at least have a beneficiary on it, so that doesn't happen. Because $6,000 is not a lot of money in the terms of money, but it's a lot of money because there's a lot of money to a lot of people, and it could do a lot of good for a lot of people if they had access to it. But it certainly wasn't worth this woman spending $6,000 to not even get that much back. So.
That is so
Debbie,
true.
But that's what happens with the will.
I don't know where
Steve.
I was telling people why I am like one of your biggest fans, but I wanted for the people who are listening on radio, give them your phone number.
813-888-8255. 813-586-1332. That's 813-586-1332.
And what is your website address?
London, like the city, London, London, Baker, Baker, law.com. LondonBakerLaw.com.
And I just want to throw, because I'm a big follower of the news, and I want to throw this in. $6,000 used to not be very much money. But I got to tell you, now they're saying that 75% of people don't even have $1,000 in their account, which is pretty sad what's happened to our economy. But that just shows you what $6,000 is worth now. And Debbie's going to be back with us again next month, the last Monday of the month. And I'm going to rerun her show again next week. So she'll be on at 9:25. We're going to rerun her show again. We're so lucky and blessed to have her. Debbie, have a wonderful week. Thank you for putting up with everything. Thanks so much.
And thanks, Rebel. Really appreciate it. All right. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's Attorney Baker. Boy, I don't think we were supposed to have today's show, Rebel, but we got through it, and we'll be back with you again next Monday with more Ask the Experts. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.